Welcome back to the Business Growth Mindset podcast. Today, we're tackling something every entrepreneur faces: mental overload. Welcome back to the Business Growth Mindset podcast. When your mind is cluttered with unfinished tasks, constant decisions, and never-ending demands, your productivity tanks, stress skyrockets, and burnout looms. In this podcast, Kristian is going to break down how capturing tasks frees up mental space and boosts efficiency, the hidden signs of mental overload and how it destroys productivity, practical systems to keep your mind clear, sharp, and focused. So if you want to stop feeling constantly on and start working with clarity and ease, stay tuned. Kristian, welcome. How are you?
I'm well, Bonnie, and you?
I'm pretty well. It's not so
Awesome.
hot. That's nice.
Not so hot. Feels like it's an oven
Oh,
outside, and inside it's cool. So we're very blessed and very lucky. There are lots of people that may not have the air conditioning for
yeah.
facilities, and I feel for them because the last few days have been horrible.
Yes, I don't want to be them at all.
No.
All right. Now, I know we are pressed for time today because, as usual, you've got back to back straight after this call. So I'm going to jump straight into it. So,
Cool.
mental overload is silently killing people's productivity, and most entrepreneurs and business owners don't even realize it. I know from working with you for 10 years now, which is crazy. You've seen your fair share of mental overload and burnout, and you've managed to maintain a clear mental space and laser focus. So I'm excited to see what insights you have to share with our listeners today. So are you ready?
I am absolutely ready.
All right. Question number 1. How does capturing tasks actually reduce mental load?
Let me preface that. Your brain is a powerful tool. There's no denying it. But it's not designed to store and track endless lists of tasks. When you try to hold everything in your mind, such as deadlines, meetings, to-dos, you actually create a cognitive overload. And this leads to stress, decision fatigue, and ultimately, what I see very often in business owners is decreased productivity. And the simple act of capturing tasks externally, whether in a notebook or an app or a structured system, actually frees up mental space and improves function. So that's really important. So what's the science behind all this? When we try to remember everything, our brain engages in what's called, and let me just remember, and I'm going to mispronounce this, but it's the Zeigarnik effect, right? So I think it's Zeiga RNIK effect, and we'll put it in the show notes. And that's the tendency to hold on to unfinished tasks, keeping them at the forefront of your mind. And what this does is actually it creates the mental clutter, but makes it harder to focus on the task at hand. So by writing things down, and I always say think on paper, and I stole that from Brian Tracy like 25 years ago, we offload that mental load. And what that does, it helps us reduce stress, but also allows our brain to function on execution rather than retention. Okay. And that is science. Okay. Um, so what are some of the practical strategies that people can use then to capture tasks? Things that I've used, right? There's things like, I think it's called the brain dump method, right? If I remember correctly. But basically, every morning or evening, spend 5 minutes or so to write down everything that you need to do. Okay. No structure, just a raw list that clears your mind. And on many occasions, I actually get clients to do this and send it to me. Right. I get you guys to do it in the team. And everyone's kind of like, here he goes again. Wonder why he's doing that. Well, there is science to it, right? So that essentially is, what has been referred to as the brain dump method, right? Then there's another thing that's called the 1-3-5 rule. Okay, so prioritize one big task, 3 medium tasks, and 5 small tasks for each day. And what this one does, it actually keeps your focus sharp, but prevents the overwhelm. And then there's another one that I've used before, And that's kind of like, we call it the second brain approach. And by using tools like Notion, Evernote, there's another one called Todoist, I think. Is What these things do is they act as external memory systems by capturing your tasks, ideas, and reminders. So one of the things is I used to use Evernote back in the day. I've used Notion. What I actually have started doing for the last couple of years, I use Google Task, and I drop it in, or my EA will drop it in, or people, any member of my team that has access, and we get into it. So, and just to give people some examples of this, I worked with, I've worked with like almost 1,400 business owners. I think we signed up someone new today, so that could officially be number 1,400 because we're at 1,399. Um, I worked with a business owner who was drowning in decision making, like totally when they came to me. And every day she tried to juggle emails, staff issues, sales goals, personal tasks, right? And, being a mum of three children, she carried the mental load of home life as well. But when I started working with her, I realized she wasn't writing anything down, right? And she felt like she was always on, but never making any real progress. So I immediately showed her, we immediately implemented a structured task capture system. And that is just basically, a simple to-do list using the Eisenhower Matrix. So really focusing on urgent and important. And her stress dropped significantly. And within weeks, she was telling me, hey, I'm more in control, I'm more productive, and I'm way less exhausted. And I preface that way less exhausted because running around with three kids was already exhausting. And this was a business with, five employees, couple of contractors, right? Allied health business, and quite remarkable. And we still work with this person today. They're a much bigger business now. But look, I think what's really important for our listeners to understand is that your brain is for thinking, not for storing. And if you want to reduce the mental overload, you've got to get your tasks out of your head and into some kind of trusted system. And the simple act of capturing, right, your tasks will absolutely be a game changer for your clarity, for your focus, but more importantly, your overall mental well-being, Bonnie. So I know I kind of went a little bit deeper on that, but I think it's really important that people understand this is a really big topic. And even though I'm a strategist, and an advisor, I get this from $120 million CEOs right through to startup businesses. And that's why I thought this is a really cool topic for us to dive into, because we get so many questions about it. And it's not that hard. And we're happy to share all those tools. We have all those tools available for our clients. So more than happy to share them.
Yeah, I know you've helped me use a couple of his tools when we started growing, getting team members, and I just spent my whole day going, I forgot this, I forgot this. And I feel like I've just spent my whole life for about 2 months doing that until finally we got brain dump down first and then started getting within a task system. So
I have
tools
used every one of
definitely
these
work.
on you. I've used every one of these on you in 10 years. Right. And God knows that we're still working through it. I think
Yeah,
the reality of it is we all work through it. Like I have to go through cycles all the
yeah,
time. I think I said it to you this morning, to the whole team on our huddle. I'm kind of done. Like I'm a little bit cooked. I've been working a lot of hours. Even my wife said, "Where's your normal work-life balance?" And I'm like, right now we just don't have one. We're 10xing this year, and I'm all about the surge, as Elon Musk says. It's the surge. But yeah, this morning it was like, yeah, and I'm still kind of. I mean, for me, I've got chronic pain from my back still, and so they
yeah,
contribute to all of those things. But it's the awareness factor. You've got to be aware of it.
yeah, definitely. Well, leading on from that, what are some signs of mental overload and how does it affect productivity? And maybe we could do this from the lens of like both you and also your team, because heaps of listeners they have teams. So they're having to manage this not just for themselves, but for
Yeah.
others.
Look, I think mental overload isn't just about feeling busy. It's when your brain is processing more than it can handle, leading to stress, fatigue, poor decision making, right? So many business owners and leaders suffer um, from this daily without even realizing it. That's the biggest issue, right? Earlier I said about self-awareness. So what are the warning signs that is actually killing most people? I think what I'll do, rather than teams, me, or clients, I might just go for I'll take it from that broad position. So some of the signs of mental overload, um, things like, you might feel scattered. Um, you might start forgetting details. You struggle to make even simple choices. They kind of like you panic even about like, what are we having for dinner? Mental overload actually drains the cognitive resources, making even minor decisions absolutely exhausting. And really interesting, this is something that in the last couple of weeks, have picked up with me. You know me, I remember everything. My brain is designed for storage and designed for cognitive function. And I think a lot of that is because I've pushed myself. You can train your brain. And I've pushed myself for so many years to work at a certain level of intensity. And I'm not special. There are people out there that are 10 times, 100 times, 1,000 times more special than me in this area. And generally, you'll find it with people with ADHD, like me, because we've always had to work that little bit more to get there. And we're not prepared to give up, right? So then you've got, the big one is that when your brain is actually overloaded, what it will do, it'll actually try and protect you by delaying action. Okay. So you might find yourself scrolling on social media, rechecking emails, or putting off critical work. I see this all too often in our team. I see this all too often in other people's teams when I'm going in and doing audits of organizations that I've been asked to write a corporate strategy with. I always love to interview the key people, the executive team, and understand um, how they're pulsing before we start to implement new things, because otherwise you just overload them more and it's like, oh gosh, what's going on? And a lot of consultants make this mistake. They'll go into organizations thinking they're going to wave this cookie cutter that they've got, particularly the big four. No insult to the big four, but they have cookie cutters and they go in. And a lot of the times, because they're sending juniors in rather than the senior guys that have seen there and been done that. And also they have that accounting mentality. So whereas I like to go in and actually study the organization in 1 or 2 days and then say, hang on a second, we've got a whole bunch of different techniques that we can deploy here. But you're already using Trello boards, you've already got these people overloaded. You need to stop overloading them. That's step one. Let's not go and complicate this. And so then all of a sudden I build immediate trust with the key executive team in these companies. And the owners look at me and they're like, how is it that you just got buy-in in less than 2 days? I said, because I'm actually asking them questions and I'm caring about where they're at, right? So that's really important. The other thing is that if you feel like your mind is running a marathon with no finish line, that is a sign of overload, right? So you're constantly on and unable to relax even outside of work. This is massive. You don't have this problem. You can do anything with I was going to say Pims and lemonade just to stir you up, but anything with a cocktail in hand, you can de-stress and the load is off, right? But a lot of people can't do that. A lot of people can't actually, separate themselves from
Yeah.
from that position, and that's a serious bloody issue. So the other one, the obvious one is trouble sleeping, and that is a great big sign of burnout. But also those creative people, like we do a lot of work with creatives in our growth school program. Overload keeps your brain in a reactive state. And what that does is it actually limits your ability to think strategically or even come up with new ideas. And when we see that at growth school, when they come together every quarter in person, I can immediately see who in the room in the first 15 minutes, if I'm not already aware, who's overloaded. Their creativity is dropped immediately. So I'll tap them on the shoulder, and you've seen me. I'll go and have a conversation with them. I'll increase their energy, make them feel like they can do it. And then we get into the strategic planning process. And because we use a very quirky methodology, they're back game on and they're reset for 90 days. Sometimes, you know, I'm starting to realize that the things that we take for granted are the frameworks that we use in our programs that actually get people to be at their peak performance. And I never sell them as benefits, even though they are absolutely benefits. And the reason is because for me, they're normal. Like it's things that I have used over and over again. So they're kind of the signs of overload. But I guess how mental overload actually destroys productivity is something, again, a little bit different, right? Because a cluttered mind leads to missed details, overlooked deadlines, and really poor quality work, right? So people just make more mistakes, right?
Yeah.
Tasks take longer, and that is because your brain is constantly switching between all the competing priorities. My favorite word, that I say that to everyone, stop with the competing priorities. That's why I'm not a big believer of working from home. It's been a trial for years. I'm also not a big supporter and haven't been my whole life of open space working because it's distracting and then there's competing priorities. People, oh, that conversation I've got to have with that person or this person, or I've got this other, I've got to go pick up my children in the middle of the day. Like, I get it that employees have had this wonderful time, right? But there's evidence now that there is more overload and more burnout now that people are working from home than before. And people are blaming it. Oh, but now I'm being forced to go back to work. That is why. That's nonsense, right? It is nonsense. People have been going to work in a facility for some 2,000 years, right? So let's not take the piss, right? Or at least more, even before Christ, right? So the reality of it is people have been going to work. The problem is that as humans, we always want more and more and more. But the problem is I don't care that you're saving travel time. That's not my problem. I've still got to travel to work, right? And our customers don't care. Our customers want to be serviced. They want to be relied upon, right? But also there's a whole lot of other benefits that when you're around people, and you know this,
Yeah.
you struggle when you work on your own all the
I
time
hate it.
because you have this impulsive desire for human connection, which is natural. Like it's fucking natural, right? We will never, Lucy always cracks the shits when I say this, but we weren't designed to be alone. We're human beings. We were designed. Whether you believe in religion or not, we were created as two. Whether we were Adam and Steve or Adam and Eve or Eve and Rachel, I don't care. Like the point I'm trying to make is we were created as a pair. Even if that's just a story, right? I mean, we biologically to produce, we always had to be two, right?
Yeah.
So I understand that people crave it, and you get that, and working with other people that are excited. This morning our COD call, there was like 22 clients on the call. It's I now take both calls. Originally, I only took Thursdays, and I thought, no, bugger it. I'm all in with these guys this year, and the biggest thing that they say to me at the end of it is not only do we learn, it's like, man, the energy you bring sets me up for the day, and it's kind of like. Yep. And to think that today I'm absolutely knackered, right? Like, and so why? Because as a professional, I've got to show up, right, in my best state so I can give people that and then
Yeah.
deliver it. Just like I turn up to these, we could have not filmed today, right? We could have gone, yeah, forget it. We've got heaps of other work on. You've got heaps of work. I've got heaps of work. But we want to be consistent, right?
Yeah.
Because consistency allows the brain to flow. Okay. So I guess the other thing is, what a lot of people do is they lose focus on the high value activities. And the other thing it affects dramatically, it affects leadership, right?
Yeah.
If you are mentally overloaded, your team feels it too, and you become less present, more irritable, and you struggle to make clear decisions. And that is why now, whenever I'm feeling a bit flat, which is rare, as you know, I normally preface that in a meeting and say, hey, I'm feeling like this. And you immediately, when I'm saying that because I'm being vulnerable. All right, what can we drop out of your calendar? What can we structure? And I really appreciate that. And like, okay, it's cool, Kristian. I'll do that. I know you've got too much on. I'll make some time. And like people then jump to that. And I think that's the quality of great leadership. I'm not saying I'm a great leader. I'm just saying that's a quality of great leadership is that ability to be vulnerable, right? But also acknowledge when you're in that state. So,
Yeah.
I guess, I was once, and I was reflecting on a time while I was giving you that answer. I was once, and this is a previous client, not anymore. I was coaching a really high performing entrepreneur, a global entrepreneur, and I was actually coaching them. They actually asked me, Kristian, I know you're not a coach, I know you're an advisor, but I really want to just hang out with you, and I want to chew the fat on stuff every single week for an hour a week. And I said, sure, look, you're going to pay me a ridiculous amount of money. Why wouldn't I do it? And I'm not a coach because it's not something that I'm normally prepared to give the answers, like listen in. And we worked together for 2 years and it was amazing. And the reason we don't work together is they had a really successful exit and they're now retired, like, living on the Croatian coast, living the life that I want to live. So, they were running multiple businesses and they were also managing a large team and they were trying to balance family life. And she was constantly overwhelmed. But instead of stepping up, she just worked longer hours, thinking that the grind would actually solve the problem. And I'm totally anti-hustle and anti-grind. And as a former entrepreneur and resident of a Sandstone University, they are not the types of people that say no hustle, no grind. But I know that hustle and grind is just bullshit, right? It's just like, let's be fucking cool. There's no such thing as being cool in business. You're either on or you're off, right? Like that's it. Okay. So instead of her productivity, so instead, uh, her productivity dropped, all the mistakes started turning into big problems, and eventually she actually hit burnout, right? So she was absolutely disengaged, lost motivation, and her business suffered profitably as well as team morale. And the reason I got involved is she's like, I want to sell now. And I said, you can't sell now. You've like spent 10 years building this thing, sacrificed your family, right? And I said, that's why I'll work with you. And in 2 years, we turned the whole dial right around for a phenomenal exit. So, what did we do? We introduced her to structured task prioritization, to setting very clear boundaries, really clear boundaries for herself, her team, and her whole family, right? But the biggest thing that we installed was meditation practices, right? She regained her clarity. She worked smarter instead of harder. And what we actually saw was way higher efficiency with fewer hours. And that is actually the reason why I talk about this is because this is one of the people that inspired me to launch the Aligned State with my guru, Bronwyn Coles, because this was 8 years ago, 7 years ago. And so I look back now, and this is even just before I was consulting. So I was doing this on the side. And what blew my mind is that as I've been developing this process with Bronwyn, we decided at the end of last year, I finally convinced her, I said, listen, you can't be my secret weapon forever. Right? We've got to release you, and we've got to release you to the world. Now, most people are thinking, what is this aligned state thing you're talking about? This is the first time I've talked about it online. We've only got 2, 3 people signed up. They're clients already. We only went to clients. There's people on the wait list. We're testing it out. This month is all about purpose. And so far, the mental clarity the people are getting are fantastic. And it's exactly what we wanted. We get goosebumps on our live sessions twice a week. But then we have every single day. There's meditations that Bronwyn tailors right to how the universal patterns of energy are moving around, which is how she keeps me linear, right? So, and that's really important. So, key takeaways that I think from that is that the mental overload, Bonnie, is a productivity killer, right? But the first step to fixing it is awareness, and I'm going to keep saying that, right? It's self-awareness, and if you recognize the signs yourself, it's just time to pause, reassess, and implement strategies to offload the mental burden, because the clearer your mind, the sharper your results.
I love it. I was going to ask you one question, but you've semi-answered it. So I'm going to ask you to just quickly touch on one element of it. So I was going to ask how to create a system to actually keep your mind clear and focused. If you think you have anything to add that you haven't covered, absolutely. But one thing I know that lots of people have struggled with when you've helped them implement this is actually how do you build that habit in the first place? Because I think a lot of people, I've seen you implement it with me and with other people, and 3 days later, you're just back into your spinning and you're doing a whole heap of stuff all at once and you're not getting anything done and you just fall straight out of it. So how do you build a system that actually you can stick to, and how do you build that habit to make sure you don't fall back into those bad habits and end up
Yeah.
exactly where you started?
All right. I'll answer that part first, and then I'll talk about some of the systems. Um, a habit, a habit is something you form over a period of time. You're certainly not going to form it over 3 days,
No.
because you need to change the way your brain's wired. Um, and unfortunately, most people are not wired for success, right? They all want it, They're just not prepared to do the hard work. And the easiest example of this is weightlifting, right? Um, Actually, I'm going to use you as an example. Last week, you did your extreme uh, trip to the gym where you trained 5 days. You couldn't even walk,
I'm back at
right?
it tonight.
Right? Okay, but you couldn't even walk. You're like, ah, ah. It's like me and you walking around in the office. It was like two walking geriatrics, right? And you're like 30, I'm like 47. So it's not like, combined age 77, and that's exactly how we're behaving, like unfit 77-year-olds. But the reality of it is it's consistency, right?
Yeah.
That's the secret. So, a lot of people don't know, well, they found out on the weekend that in the end of September, started training again. And the irony of it is, I used to be nicknamed the Bear because I'm very strong. And so when I used to train at the gym 14 odd years ago, um, I, um, I hold a lot of records for lifting in that gym, not like famous records, but amongst a very big group of bodybuilders, and benching 265 kilos. Like that was a bench press for me. Um, but then I met Lucy, and I decided to get back in the food game, and just started eating way too much, drinking too much. And we had children, and 65, 70 kilos later. But I made a decision to change. And I've tried to change for 6 or 7 years, could never get into the habit. So I went to memory recall. And this is I'm giving you guys super intel. And my memory recall is my mate Trent. And Trent Mitchington, one of the best trainers that I've ever worked with. He not only has been a mate of mine for 20 years, um, he's the man that got me into shape back, 14 years ago, after a 10-year hiatus from training, or whatever it was, from professional sport. And um, and I knew that if I started training with him again, I would actually turn up because he would kick my ass. But the reality of it is, I absolutely love training with him. Like, I've got a sciatic nerve issue at the moment. I went to train today. He looked at me. He goes, "You can't even walk." I said, "Oh well." I said, "I'm here. Let's lift." Right? It's about consistency. And on Friday, we did a 160 kilo bench. So in less than 4 months of training, I'm back up to 15 reps of 160 kilos. Right now, I'm also 47 years old. Like I'm not 37-year-old or a 35-year-old anymore. Things happen as you get older. Your testosterone drops and all those things. And even today, even though I wasn't up for it and my mood was down, I went and trained. It's the mindset. That's what I'm getting at. It's like, you to create um, a really successful habit, you've got to believe it. You got to have 100% clarity. You got 100% belief, and you got to have 100% of the time. Right. And that's a Dan Martell 300% rule. I don't know if he stole that from someone else or he created it, but I love it. Dan is one of my mentors and one of my coaches. And, I've enjoyed immensely working alongside him, um, and just getting that extra 2% that I need. But look, there is a whole bunch of other things that you could do. So that Bonnie is for me the way that I have been able to do that. Okay.
Can I
And
add one little thing that you taught me that I don't think you threw in there? When maybe a couple of years ago, when I was trying to get into the habit of actually putting my task down, and you said, don't worry about actually doing it all perfectly. While you're building the habit, the only thing you have to do is you have to sit down for the 15 minutes and write stuff down. I don't care
yeah,
if you succeed or fail, the habit you're building is sitting down and planning for 15 minutes. And for me, that really helped because it wasn't about winning or losing at whatever I was doing. It was just making sure I made that time for planning. And that's the one thing that actually really worked for me. So I just
yeah,
wanted to make sure
good,
I
good,
shared
good
that with
highlight.
you.
And I mean, and I think that is actually, and again, this is all the shit that I forget
Yeah.
in all of our programs, in all of our group coaching programs, whether it's customers on demand or growth school, we have three non-negotiables that everyone has to do every day. And if people don't do them, and we get people to check, if people don't do them, we don't let them ask questions. Like, it's simple. You can't get my help if you don't do the three non-negotiables. Now that's kind of ruling with an iron fist, but I'm doing it because some people just can't help themselves. And it's like, I'm like, come on, man. Like, this isn't that hard, right? Now, if you want to know what our three non-negotiables are, I'm not going to tell you. You have to sign up to the programs. There's only certain things that I'll give away, but that's not one of them. And they're not complex, but people do them, and it increases their ability to generate leads, build a brand, and also feed their brain, right? Which is really important. But look, there are some things that I do want to work through with you. I mean, one of them is the brain is an incredible problem-solving machine, and it's not great at remembering, organizing, or managing long lists of tasks. Okay, so so the key is that it wants to automate decision making and reduce mental friction. Okay, so what some of the things that I have always loved and used is the Eisenhower method along with the brain dump, right? Like the two things that I talked about earlier, they're excellent tools, right? Um, we've had lots of seven-figure, clients that have constantly been stressed out about tasks slipping through the cracks. So, when they started using the simple task capture method and prioritization systems, their work felt lighter. They made fewer mistakes, and the team became self-sufficient. But some of the other things that there's some of the tools that I talked about earlier. Some of the things that are really important, Bon, is that I don't work to this rule, but most people should start with this, is to follow the 9 minute work block rule, right? So work in deep focus for 90 minutes, then take a 15, 20-minute break and do whatever. Now, I work to 20-minute, right? I work to the Pomodoro method. So, because I'm in beast mode, bear mode. So 20-minute intervals with then a 1 or 2 minutes walk around, right? Just do something completely different, switch off, come back, go again. That's because I've got really bad ADHD. So if I don't practice those things, but if I got to do really deep work, I can lock myself away for 3 hours, 4 hours, no problem, right? And my productivity doesn't drop because I'm used to it, right?
Yeah.
But if you do that over and over and over again, you will burn out, right?
Yeah.
So that's the first one. The other thing is that works really successfully, particularly for clients when we're trying to get the pulse of their organization, is having theme days. Okay, so you batch basically based on the days. So Monday might be strategy, Tuesday might be meetings, Wednesday might be deep work. So the big one that I implement with a lot of our clients is meeting days. So like we run our entire group of companies on a Monday. So I only have what three client calls and a board meeting every fortnight, right, on Mondays, and then I pick up my kids from school, drop them off to school, but that's it. That's my whole day. So, and they're my two big one-on-one clients that get access to me on a Monday. Otherwise, that is how we run our companies. And then we have follow-up meetings on Wednesday, and we have huddles every single day, right? But Monday is team day. Now, why do we do it on that day? Is because there's public holidays on Mondays. So if I had client work, I'd have to then move them, whereas I don't have to move team days. So there's a lot of smarts around why we did things that way. The other thing is their 2 minute rule. Really cool concept. If something takes less than 2 minutes, do it immediately. Okay, get it off your plate. Don't just have this exhaustive task list and then keep writing shit. If it's 2 minutes, do it. Bang. If it's over 2 minutes, no. Then put it in your Eisenhower method. Um, Probably one of the other things that's really important, and this goes back to why we created the aligned state, that is decompressing and resetting your system. Every day, start with meditation or breath work. And no bullshit. If you told me that meditation was going to change my life, right, 30 years ago, I would have said bullshit. And then all of a sudden, I started, and I've been doing meditation for a long time. I've been doing breath work for a long time. And it's gotten me over some of the most stressful moments of my entire life. It's not, most people don't build a $30 million empire and then lose it, right? Like, and, most people that lose it lose their own soul. For me, my spirituality, my strong mindset, but the breath work and meditation got me through those most difficult days of my life. And then that helps you build that resilience, that grit that you need to move forward. So I can't undervalue meditation and breath work. For some people, it's yoga, whatever it might be. The other thing is people should have an end of day shutdown routine. So where they, review their accomplishments, plan for tomorrow's priorities, and physically step away from work, right? And this is the problem with people that work from home. Like, you work from home now, like, because you're in middle of nowhere again. moving around the countryside for certain reasons. But
Yeah.
but the other thing is use weekly clarity check-ins. So reflect on your work, right?
Yeah.
What worked, what didn't work, and adjust accordingly. Okay. So you know, I also work with a handful of CEOs and CMOs, like chief medical officers, where I advise them, and these guys are constantly overwhelmed by what I call decision fatigue. So when we help them start their day, we start by ending their workday with a structured shutdown routine. And what happens is for a lot of these guys, the stress level drops like 50%, and they find themselves making much clearer, faster decisions. So that's kind of like a little gold mine that I want to give away to people, right? And I think finally, the goal of any system isn't to add more to your plate. It's
Yeah.
actually to give you back time, to give you back focus, and to create more energy. So when you build simple, repeatable systems for capturing tasks, managing focus, as well as resetting your mind, you actually free yourself from the mental clutter and you step into peak productivity and well-being. And that to me is what a great system does.
I like it. Thank you very much. The only thing I would add on to that as well is working from home. The one thing that also can assist with that whole situation, because it's not ideal. I agree. I hate it, but circumstance says I have to right now. Having a room where you only go in there to work. Try, like, obviously not everyone has access to that, but if possible, having a door you can shut and say, I'm leaving now. I'm no longer at work. Goodbye. Makes a huge
100%.
difference mentally. All right.
Yeah,
Well,
don't
thanks,
work from your
Kristian.
couch. Don't work from anywhere.
Mm,
Like people need to think about it. Yeah,
yeah.
great.
Well, thank you so, so much for those insights. Mental overload isn't just stress. I think people try and interweave those all the time. It's not exactly the same thing. It is different. And it is a massive productivity killer that impacts decision making, focus, and overall business performance. I think we've all carried the key takeaways that we usually do at the end of the podcast. Is there anything you want to add, or I think we've probably covered everything?
Look, I think the big one is that brain fog, right? Um, and constant forget. I want people to take this away more than anything else. Um, Identify the signs of mental overload: brain fog and constant forgetfulness, decision fatigue and procrastination, a lack of creativity, as well as a reduced problem solving ability, and then anxiety, stress, and difficulty sleeping. Like if I all the other tools, if you comment tools in the podcast or in any of the reels that we'll push out, we'll send you the tools. Happy to share them with you. I don't want, I'm a very generous person, as you know, happy to share it with the world. What I don't want is I don't want people not identifying the situation that they're in, because that will absolutely, it won't help anybody, right? So and business is already hard enough. So we don't need to make it harder for ourselves.
Agree. Well, everyone, if you're serious about reducing overwhelm, reclaiming your focus, start implementing these strategies today. And please let us know if they worked for you, if you have any feedback, or you want to share anything that's happened since you've implemented any of them. We would love for you to tag us on social media or reach out in any of our comments. We look forward to seeing you all next week on the Business Growth Mindset podcast.
Bye.
See ya.